Recently on Fox and Friends, Kevin McCarthy tried to distance himself from his corrupt, disgraced fellow Republican George Santos, while simultaneously protecting Santos from expulsion because he needs Santos's votes. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe, and enjoy the video. On paper, Kevin McCarthy is one of the most powerful men in the country. He's Speaker of the House of Representatives, which makes him second in line in presidential succession after the Vice President. He's the leader of the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives on paper. And you would think that, that's a pretty cushy gig. But as everybody predicted from the beginning, Kevin McCarthy has had a rough time managing his caucus, beginning with the 15 or 16 or 17 votes it took for him to become Speaker in the first place, which was an historic humiliation, as well as the fact that he has been dealing with a party in open rebellion ever since he was forced to cave to President Biden during the debt ceiling negotiations, as well as a number of other issues. He's currently trying to moderate issues between the more moderate elements of the Republican Party and the far-right Trump-loving cult, the Freedom Caucus. Now, again, we have no sympathy for Kevin McCarthy because he had every opportunity to nip this in the bud early on, but stupidly, he prioritized short-term gains for the Republican Party over its long-term health. That said, he recently went on Fox and Friends, one of the Fox Propaganda Network's biggest shows. And this clip is really interesting because the topic turned to George Santos, who is also a very high-profile Republican. He's a freshman Republican congressman who was elected in a blue New York district, flipped a seat from a Democrat to a Republican. And then ever since then, we found out that George Santos has lied and lied and lied about major elements of his biography, his work history, his history of philanthropy, all these things. And he's also under indictment, I think, by 13 federal charges, right? So this is a beleaguered, profoundly corrupt man. Pretty typical for the Republican Party. So Fox and Friends asked Kevin McCarthy point blank about essentially his relationship with George Santos. And I want you to hear the clip, and then we're going to unpack it.
Will your governor get in the race, Gavin Newsom?
Oh, he's craving to. I mean, Californians want him out of California, but we don't want him to do the same damage to our country.
Yeah, he's a disaster. George Santos, are you a part of his reelection campaign?
No, I am not.
Right.
No, he shouldn't run for reelection.
Have you done anything for that seat to try to get a Republican in there?
Oh, we're gonna keep that seat with another Republican. Yes, we are.
So a couple of things. Yes, as a reminder, Kevin McCarthy is a member of the House of Representatives in addition to the Speaker, and his state is California. And he's smack-talking Newsom, who, by the way, would effortlessly crush Kevin McCarthy in any sort of conversation or debate because Newsom is infinitely more intelligent and prepared on the facts. And McCarthy says, oh, Californians want Newsom out. Well, actually, there was a recall vote just a few years ago because the recall vote in California, the threshold is extremely low. And Newsom cleared it with, by leaps and bounds. So there's no evidence with which I am familiar that Californians want Gavin Newsom out of office. That would also be a nightmare for the Republican Party. The Republican Party in 2028 faces an uphill presidential climb if Newsom is the frontrunner. That said, George Santos, that's the real focus here. Notice how he laughs. Oh my God, no, of course. I have nothing to do with George Santos's reelection campaign. The guy shouldn't run. He shouldn't run. Now, he didn't go into any detail, but of course the reason McCarthy says George Santos shouldn't run is because George Santos is, again, famously corrupt in such a short time. This is a freshman congressman. He's not even a year into office yet. This is the beginning of his nascent political career at the federal level. And he's been indicted on 13 federal charges, which include unlawful monetary transactions over $10,000, theft of public money, wire fraud, fraudulent application for and receipt of unemployment benefit, false statements to 2020 House disclosure reports, false statements to 2022 House disclosure reports. This is a profound embarrassment to the Republican Party, which professes to be the party of principle and family values in Jesus Christ. But as we know, that's really not what the Republican Party is. The Republican Party is the party of Donald Trump, George Santos, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others. Dishonest, stupid, incompetent, profoundly corrupt people. And it needs to be hammered again and again and again. The GOP is infinitely more corrupt as a political entity than the Democratic Party at its worst. And George Santos is proof of that. The problem is there's no way to spin Santos's corruption, right? Now, Republicans are really good at spin, but even their powers have limits. And certainly, like they spend so much political capital on trying to keep Donald Trump's reputation on life support, and they're failing to do that. They don't have the means and the capital to defend George Santos. The problem is this. If Kevin McCarthy were a man of principle, and if principle dictated that he can't back in good faith George Santos' reelection bid because George Santos is corrupt and incompetent and a liar, then you would think Kevin McCarthy would support efforts to expel him from the House of Representatives, because there have been attempts to do just that. Hey, listen, George Santos lied. He lied about major elements of his biography, not just like minor details, but huge swaths, his education, again, his history of philanthropy, his work history, etc. and so forth. He's entangled in international crimes. Authorities in Brazil have charged that, George Santos engaged in crimes in Brazil. I mean, this guy is just a disgrace all the way around, domestically, locally, internationally. Get him out of Congress. He's clearly not fit for office. But because Kevin McCarthy's Republican margin in the House of Representatives is so slim, something like 5 to 8 seats, he can't afford to lose Santos, especially when you consider George Santos is representing a blue district. His victory, George Santos's victory in New York, was an outlier. That district was reputably, consistently blue. And odds are, no guarantee, but odds are, if George Santos were to be removed from Congress and there was a new election to take his place, or if Governor Kathy Hochul is in a position to appoint his replacement, I'm not sure what the rules are for members of the House of Representatives. I know that's the case for the Senate, where the governor can appoint the replacement if a senator either dies in office or resigns or is kicked out. Not sure what it is for the House. But either way, odds are that it would be a Democrat to take George Santos's place. And Kevin McCarthy can't afford to do that. So you see how principle takes a back seat when convenient to pragmatic reality, because the Republican Party is not a party of principle. They're not the party of Jesus Christ. They're not the party of family values. They're the party of do whatever you need to win. And Kevin McCarthy says he won't back him for re-election, but we really have no reason to believe that, right? If Kevin McCarthy does the math and goes, well, as unpopular as George Santos is, he's also the incumbent. There's no real reason to believe that a Republican stands a chance to take that district. So George Santos is our best bet. We have no reason to believe, and every reason to believe, actually, that Kevin McCarthy will, when the time comes, back Santos for re-election, because we can't trust anything Kevin McCarthy says. He's not a principled actor. I'll also remind everybody, there's a poll earlier this year. Nearly 80% of George Santos's own constituents, including 71% of his Republican constituents, so 80%, 78% overall, Republican and Democrat, who he is supposed to represent, and then 71% of the Republicans exclusively, want Santos to resign. That's how disgraced this man is, how unpopular he is, how corrupt and incompetent and unethical. But here we have Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, in such an awkward position where he is trying to simultaneously distance himself from Santos while protecting him in the short term because he needs Santos. So anyway, it's further demonstration of the Republican Party's hypocrisy and the ethical compromises they make along the way, and further illustrative of how screwed Kevin McCarthy is. And we're here to see it.